I grew up in Ontario, and I had a great life. I did a lot of drugs. I drank a lot of booze. I had lots of friends before Facebook had friends lists. Like I had it all, and life was great. And if you would have told me I had a problem, I just never, like, I still chuckle at the idea of who I was back then in my early teens is when I started. And I know what that's called now, failure to launch adults, but back then I didn't know what that meant. And I was just this reckless person who spent everyone's money, including, my parents' money. And when everybody else would go to school or university or move on to work life or get married and have kids or whatever their, life journey was, I stayed in the bars and the party scene. And I got older, but I still kept on doing the same reckless behavior. And one day I decided to move to Vancouver because life in Ontario got really unmanageable. I had no idea that it was my fault. I blamed everybody else. Got on a plane, moved to Vancouver, very reckless now that I look back because I didn't know anyone here. And as I was here, my addiction followed me. I still didn't know I had a problem. I never went to counselors or therapists or anything like that. It became very common for me not to go to sleep at night. I would just pass out when I needed to rest. And I just thought that was normal. And I had lived a very risky life. And most of the substances I would use for people that are using substances would be like the soft drugs and drinking and all that. But eventually, when I got into Vancouver, I'll never forget it. I remember walking down Hastings and I thought to myself, I can't, this is horrible. I can't believe this is Canada. Like, I just thought I was better than everybody. I'll never forget that. Like, I was shocked. It was like, one of the first weeks I was here in BC. And little would I know, like 5-6 years later, I'd be using in the alleys of the same neighborhood. I was shocked to see. And so something happens to people. You just get accustomed and used to
lifestyle.
Yeah, you just get used to it. And then what was shocking to me, watching people use drugs on the street, became normal and became what I used to do. And some of us get there within weeks. Some of us get there within years. It took me, over a decade of hard drug use to finally get there, but I eventually got there. And I still was in denial, and I was still not thinking I had a problem and it was everybody else's fault. And then I got really in trouble, and financially, employment-wise. Some people call it a bottom. I got in a lot of trouble, and I needed to get out of it, and I ended up in detox. And when I ended up in detox, that's when the real chaos, I like to say, began, because I had to navigate the mental health and addiction system that was available at that time. And I had the camp that said go to 12-step meetings. I had the camp that said take medications. I had the camp that said use safely. I had the camp that said don't do this or you'll die. And it was really confusing because I just wanted to use drugs. I just had no intentions of anything else. I just wanted to have a little bit of money in the bank and use drugs. And then I couldn't do that, so it drove me crazy. And I had all these healthcare providers with different opinions telling me what I should do. And I had to navigate that. And I don't think I've ever really forgiven or forgotten that experience. And I think that's why I got into what I do with the conference and Recovery Day, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But I don't want anyone to experience that. Like, you don't break your arm and walk into a hospital room and have different opinions from all the workers. This is what we'll do for you. And nobody asks you how much money you have, or should you pay for treatment, or are you on welfare? And that happened to me. Like, I had to go on welfare to go to treatment. And I don't know why there's an uproar about that. Like, I'm creating a loud message to the government. Like, I shouldn't have had to apply for welfare to go to treatment. And I had to. I had to prove I was poor, open up a welfare file, because I didn't have enough money to go to private treatment, but I had a little bit of assets that I couldn't really qualify for a funded bed. And I was just in the detox kind of, having people in recovery guide me through the steps so I can apply for welfare to get into rehab. I look back now and I'm just like, that's ridiculous. Like, why did I have to do that? So I went to detox, and I remember in the detox, the physician wanted to prescribe me medications, and medications to sleep, medications to wake up, medications for this, medications for that, medications for this. I'd never been on any medications, like ever, except for my drugs. And somebody in recovery who worked in the detox kind of pulled me aside, and they call it a 12-step call. I mean, he was at work, so technically it's not really a 12-step call. But he basically had to do the side ear conversation, like, hey, there's a better way to live, and you can go to treatment, and you can do this, and you can't get clean. And I don't know why, but I believed him, and I tried it. And
So was that the motivation? This person who pulled you aside,
yeah,
and had a conversation with you,
yeah,
did that give you enough motivation to seek the next steps?
It did. It did, because it just showed me that somebody cared. And it wasn't a prescription pad. It wasn't a number in some healthcare file system. Like, this person, out of his, free time, took the moment to have that conversation. I didn't stay in recovery. Like, I don't think one magical moment's going to cure anybody. I think it's a series of magical moments that inspire us to change. I wish, to be honest with you, I don't wish there was one moment, because if there was this one thing, being an addict, I just keep wanting that one thing. And now I've learned, like, I have to take life on life's terms, and need to, enjoy the many, many gifts of life, and accumulate all of that, and say, hey, like, I got it pretty good. Like, when I came into recovery, when I was in that detox, like, I could list you hundreds of things that were wrong with life.